Good evening, everyone, and a warm welcome to you all on behalf of National HRD Network. I am Dr. Geeta Kumar, joining you all from New Delhi. I'm part of the core team that holds Mind Matters close to their hearts and heads. Professionally, I work across leadership, diversity, equity, and inclusion, sustainability, and well-being. Let me quickly share the NHRDN Mind Matters movement with you all. When we encountered the COVID pandemic in the early months of 2020, a few of us at National HRD Network got together and incubated the Mind Matters initiative, with the primary aim to normalize and destigmatize mental health conversations. So we offered initiatives for professionals in their individual capacities, for their families, teams, and the larger community. These have been in various theme-based forms like panels, workshops, and sessions on mental health, coping strategies for anxiety, stress, burnouts. In fact, we have successfully conducted the Mental Health Ambassador Certification Program, created content, toolkits for individuals and organizations. In its fifth year now, Mind Matters has carved a unique niche, garnered a fair bit of success, providing immense value to NHRDN members, their families, and organizations. Today's panel discussion we are bringing to you in partnership with Amaha, a leading mental health company. A few instructions to you all in the audience. Please view the presentation in speaker view to get a better experience. The session is being recorded and will be available on YouTube soon. If you like today's session, we would request you sincerely to share the YouTube link within your networks. Also, do share about Mind Matters and these sessions on your social media handles. While we have kept the last 10 minutes for question and answers, please keep posting your question on the chat and we will try and pick them up as required during the session. So let me invite our panelists for today. Dr. Diana Monteiro. She's the founder director of the Hyderabad Academy of Psychology. HAP, as it is known, is a counseling and training center in Hyderabad. Dr. Diana is a seasoned mental health professional, having obtained her PhD in counseling psychology from the University of Southern Mississippi, USA. Since her return to India, Dr. Monteiro and her team of hand-picked counselors practice counseling, conduct courses and workshops, and supervise other counselors in training. She continues to keep her US license active to ensure she stays up to date with current psychological science and practice. Besides, Diana is a member of the prestigious American Psychological Association, is a licensed psychologist and health service provider in Tennessee, USA. Welcome, Diana. You're mute. We'd like you to unmute yourself now.
All right, thank you. Thank you so much for having me. I'm really thrilled to be here.
Hello and welcome, Anshul. Anshul is our second panelist. Thank you for joining us today, Anshul. Anshul is a clinical psychologist at Amaha and works with individuals struggling with complex trauma, grief, depression, anxiety, attachment difficulties, abuse, OCD, bipolar disorder. He's oriented to the third wave approach to psychotherapy and also uses mental health assessments in his practice. He has experience working at the National Disaster Management Authority and with government mental health hospitals. So our third panelist, while I'm going to introduce him, will join us because there was some very, very exigent issues which he's kind of completing, and he'll join us at 5:30. But let me introduce the third panelist. He's Akshay Tyagi. We are looking forward to having him soon. He is the head of diversity, equity, inclusion at the Lalit Suri Hospitality Group. Akshay is a champion and advocate for the marginalized and LGBT community across intersectionalities. And he works across a wide spectrum of communities, NGOs, and organizations. Akshay is a passionate mental health advocate. He and his organization, the Lalit Suri Group, have introduced many mental health initiatives across their company. So he would really add a lot of value for this very important conversation. All right. So let's straight away get to the point with a very direct question to both of you. Why are we focusing on men's mental health? Shall we begin with you, Diana, and then probably Anshul can add it?
Certainly. I think if you look at any research at all, or you look at even clinical experience, mostly it is focused on women. Now, the reason for that is not, I mean, some people like to joke when I say this to large groups of people, they say, oh, that's because men don't have many mental health problems, which I wish it was really true for all the men out there. But unfortunately, that is not true. We need to focus on men's mental health because it has traditionally been such an under-focused area altogether that people start to believe that actually men don't have as many problems as women, which then makes the women unfortunately look bad, but also takes away so much from men who struggle just as much and sometimes if not more with certain kinds of problems. So I think when we were discussing it earlier, everyone always asks for women's talk on Women's Day and I think the men's talk on Men's Day, and all the men will, there'll be a few men who will whisper, what about Men's Day? Why don't you wish us for Men's Day? But here we are. I think you've chosen a fantastic topic because men typically are struggling, and that's my clinical experience. It's not that men don't seek therapy, it's that they seek therapy when things have gotten so difficult, so bad, and women, they're so much more allowed to seek help when things start to get bad. So I mean, I'm sure we'll get into the nitty-gritties of it a lot more, but this is an area that we really, really need to focus on, because the most important thing to me is that if we look at one statistic only, men complete suicide, die by suicide, more than women do. I was looking at the rates in India. The latest was 2.6 times higher a rate than women, that men's suicide rates are. The world over, it's 3 to 4 times higher. I don't think it's necessarily because India is better, Indian men are better off. I think our data is a little bit, always report suicides in the same way. I think that the rates of suicide among men are a lot higher than women. So this is a topic that really needs addressing. Over to you, Anshul.
I absolutely agree with that. And I think even the data sort of highlights that while women have more rates of depression being reported, yet the completion rates of suicide are higher in men. And that in itself tells us a story that, okay, you would perhaps expect the opposite, that if there's higher rates of depression, then perhaps the numbers will be on the other side. But then that really tells the story that something's not being reported. And it's also because a lot of men perhaps are, struggling. So some of them are just languishing. I sort of put it this way, that some of them are just on power saving mode. So you're getting through the activities of the day or the month. You're living paycheck to paycheck. You're fulfilling certain responsibilities that you have. Yet you're just existing. And on the other hand, you expect men to also be flourishing, where you have recent updated devices, you want to be using them to live a more fulfilling life. And then on the other hand, you have an illness where men are literally struggling, and a lot of them, they either, like you pointed out, seek help when it's too late, or they're also seeking out help very rarely or quietly, and that goes missed by even all of us, maybe in families, maybe at the workplace, maybe in friendships. And I think that in itself, the fact that you're focusing on this allows us to slowly unwind and look at, okay, what's going on around us, because that really starts to change. It just changes when you ask a man, okay, how are you really doing today? Don't just tell me you're doing good. How are you really doing today? Is there something that's bothering you that you did not say in front of XYZ person? And that's when actual conversations really take place. So I'm really glad that this is being focused on, and it's a very, very important topic for us to get deeper into.
Yeah, thank you, Anshul and Diana. I think what you're also saying is there is so much of social uh, barriers in terms of not being able to forget, not knowing. So I think that the next question is this: there are systemic issues there. Men have a persona, there is a mask they're supposed to, because that's what is expected to them through systems and society. But I think let's dwell a little more in what are the triggers and patterns to be aware of, or even for men to know that there is an issue and not brush it away, and common challenges around the whole mental health piece for men. If you, one of you can start and we join it.
Go ahead, Anshul, you start and I will.
Yes. So I think first things first would be the attitude that men hold, right? Because there's a certain conditioning that starts happening from a very young age, and this is where the social aspect and also cultural aspect comes into place, right? Because there's a lot of patriarchal systems in its own ways that are poking a boy right from a very young age. You know, boys don't cry. Good girl, good boy concepts. And then as you keep growing older, when men, I'm jumping a little, but when men come into therapy, their first sort of process is to start unlearning because there's resistance that comes up that, I don't think I can be even talking about this. Oh, this is normal. Everybody feels sad. Everybody feels low. I'm not unique. I'm not special. And those words, those statements in itself tell us that, there's a whole different way of looking at things. It's almost like I'm not wearing transparent glasses. I'm wearing some tinted shaded glasses and I'm seeing the world through that lens. So everybody's problems will seem, okay, this happens to everybody. This is very common. There's nothing unique or special uh, that I need to be reaching out for. And I think that's the first barrier, which is an attitude. And certainly, there's also an aspect of a structural barrier. Who do I reach out to? That if I've decided that I'm going through something, which professional should I reach out to? Should I reach out to someone who's going to prescribe medication? Should I reach out to somebody who's going to speak to me? Should I reach out to just my local physician who I go to for normal problems? And I think that in itself becomes the first point of contact. So if we are able to actually be more informed at these levels, it really starts normalizing what mental health is and how the stigma can actually be broken down. And yeah, those are some of my points. Over to you, Daniel.
Sure, thank you. Yeah, you make some really good points there. I think that when you talk about triggers and patterns, like Anshul said, we start really young. We start really young. I have a 9-year-old boy, and when he was born, I was very aware that he's a boy. And interestingly, I didn't know this until my daughter was born 3 years later. As soon as she was born, I felt a pang of fear, and I thought, wait, I didn't feel this with my son. It is so internalized within us that a girl is born, and I immediately feel the need to protect her, and a boy is born, and I'm thinking, oh, he's safe in general. And yet, clinically, I know boys get so much more sexually abused than we know because we don't talk about it. Yeah, in our country, so many boys, young boys, get abused. We never talk about sexual abuse among boys because they don't talk about it because it's just a part of the bhaiya in the colony that we trust completely and we send them off with. And I tell parents, watch your boys more than you watch your girls because the girls are being watched by everybody, according to me. The teachers, everybody's very aware. The boys are being let loose, and these young boys don't have the knowledge to be able to protect themselves, right? Now, what are they being told? My son has all, my daughter and all girls as cousins, right? So we go to the parlor, all of us go to the parlor and get nail polish put. He puts nail polish on too. He puts green, right? And he says, and so many people say to him, and this is, he was at 6, at 7, at 8, at 9. So many people say to him, you're a girl or what? You're wearing nail polish? And he feels comfortable saying, no, I'm the Hulk and boys can wear nail polish too. That's where it begins to me, that you start teaching your boys and your girls that there is equality all the time everywhere, right? Start teaching them about patriarchy really young. My husband made a big joke in the car the other day saying something really sexist. And my son went, oh, that was very patriotic of you, Dad. What he meant was it was very patriarchal of you, Dad. And I was so proud, right? Now, that's where it begins, according to me, right? Men don't even recognize many times because you and I, women don't recognize it either. I think men and women get stuck in patriarchal systems that are set up generations before we even existed on this planet, right? Now, you said triggers. How does it show up? For men, we're seeing it mostly as physical triggers. Okay, physical triggers meaning that it'll show up as headaches, stomach aches, physical symptoms that are actually manifestations of psychological issues that are happening. Because men are not allowed to cry, right? Like we said, ladke roya nahi karte. That's what that ad said. And now we're starting to change that. We all say that. And yet I hear people say, why are you crying like on the basketball field? Why are you crying like a girl? You're a girl or what? These things have to change, right? Now, real simply, anger is the first thing you will see, right? Anger is the first thing you will see because men are allowed to feel angry. Anshul, you can feel angry. Nobody will say anything to you. Geeta and I are not allowed to feel angry. We can cry. If we feel angry, we say, how dare now? They'll say, Array, she's behaving like a man. We know this for sure. We all know it intellectually. So I'll tell you my quick psychology lesson I give everybody, okay? Anshul and me will give you a quick psychology lesson. Psychologists, we tell you, your body, like it's made up of bones, muscles, all of that. Your mind is made up of 3 parts, okay? It's divided into 3 equal parts, let's say. Thoughts, feelings, and behaviors. Your thoughts are what you think. Your feelings are what you feel. Behaviors are what you do. Men are allowed to function in thoughts and behaviors very well. Anshul, let's assume he's a straight man. I'll just assume that for right now. He's supposed to get married. He's supposed to provide for his family. He's supposed to be very logical. And if anything goes wrong, he should figure it out. I tell the women who come to therapy, tell me, he's not a man. He's not providing for me. She's earning just as much as him, but she says, my money is mine to save. He's a man. He has to provide. What happens to the man? He's feeling stressed, but he's not allowed to feel stressed. He can only feel anger. So his feelings area becomes smaller and smaller and smaller and smaller. And the thinking and behavior becomes bigger and bigger in his circle. And at some point, it's going to burst because feelings have to be felt. If you don't feel feelings, they're going to pop like a balloon. So it pops as anger issues because they're allowed to feel anger. They're not allowed to feel other emotions, vulnerable emotions. So if you're wondering what are the triggers, what are the patterns, it's really simple to me. If you are in a relationship, if you have people in your life, right, and they're constantly telling you, kuch to gadbad hai, something is wrong, you need to go get help. As a man, maybe it's time to just think about that for a second because you've so been taught to always assume nothing is wrong and you will fix everything, right? So because thoughts, feelings, and behaviors do not have to always be equal. Yeah. Right now, I'm doing a lot of thinking and a lot of behaving. I'm not doing a lot of feeling, right? But if my son comes in and he's hurt, I'm going to do a whole bunch of feeling because if I do thinking and behaving, he will not react well. We have to keep moving back and forth. Men don't get that opportunity. And that's where, according to me, the problems begin because we know emotional problems are what lead to severe psychological distress. Yeah. Over to you, Geeta.
You're on mute,
Let's,
Geeta.
let's take one question which has come in the chat. What can be the standard of a fulfilling life in the Indian men's lifestyle in terms of, this whole processing of emotion? I'm also extrapolating something which has emerged from your conversation here.
Anshul, you're the man. So what's the standard you have to live up to?
Yes, I was just going to the question. Well, I would say first things first, we have to also look at it from a perspective of how it needs to be individual, yet at the same time interpersonal. So we look at intrapersonal, which is what goes on within, and at the same time interpersonal in the form of friendships, relationships, families. Now, if we actually look at, the kind of standard of a fulfilling life, we need to understand that number one, a lot of men who come in, they always look from the point of view of by a certain middle age range, I need to have achieved something. And I bring this point in because it heavily influences what they consider to be a standard for their life. A lot of people who migrate from tier 2 cities to tier 1 cities, for them, standards are as simple as I should have be able to earn a certain amount, support my family, and then support my own self if I have the headspace left. What we want to actually look for is how is it that I can provide for myself, not burn myself out, because these standards have to be upheld. It's not a one-off that you achieve them and then they take care of themselves. Because more often than not, that's the trap that men fall into. That once I achieve XYZ, then my wife is going to be okay, my partner is going to be okay, my family is going to be okay. But that doesn't happen. And the more we are able to unlearn that and look at a fulfilling lifestyle being where you are able to actually express. So it's not about I shouldn't be feeling sad or I shouldn't be feeling hurt. It's about being able to express to somebody that all of this is happening. That really starts setting a benchmark. That's what we're trying to achieve. And that is something that allows us to really look at a biopsychosocial perspective, right? Because it starts fulfilling all these different areas. When you are able to communicate that, the stigma reduces, the burden, the perceived burden or the perceived stress on yourself, that reduces. And that naturally makes space for you to function better, even in your surroundings. So that's one important element that I would add when it comes to standard of a fulfilling lifestyle. And the other thing from experience would genuinely be to be able to hold conversations, these difficult conversations with the people whom you trust the most. For a man, and especially in this age range, so if I look at millennials particularly, because they're coming more into therapy, they're reaching the 30, 35 plus mark, what happens is more often than not, all they're looking for is some form of validation and reassurance from their own family that it's okay, you're doing your best, you're striving to be doing things. So the kind of standard that they are really looking for is love and affection from their own close ones and loved ones. So the moment you get that, all these materialistic aspects, they really start to change. Then it's not about buying a house. Then it's not always about having a certain XYZ amount of saving, etc. Because men start living more. Up until now, they're usually chasing things. Living doesn't happen as much. So that's my take on, what a fulfilling standard can be like, because that, like Diana pointed out, once they start feeling things, they really change. They're much more lighter. And in fact, they become much more achieving in life once those difficult conversations take place and they're able to express it. This is how I felt when I was young. And when a parent acknowledges that, maybe we were at fault too, and it's not on you, that blame just lifts. It lifts to a point where the men start feeling that, okay, maybe I don't need to be so harsh on myself. So we have this saying sometimes, right? Man against himself. There is self-sabotage that men engage in. You want certain relationships, and yet you will, in the quest of achieving something, sacrifice whatever it is that you hold close. More often than not, that plays out in romantic relationships, in the young adults that we tend to see. But yeah, those are just some thoughts on this question.
I think these are so deep, and I mean, it's such a simple thing of love and affection, and that could be a standard. I think I'm just with that, and that's just so simple of being accepted for who you are. And I feel also, as what you said, language seems to be a barrier for men as well. The whole expression of what can be said, the being vulnerable needs a different language, and probably that's another thing which is not taught, as Dinah said from the beginning. It's not just not the demeanor, but even the expression and the kind of language that one could.
May I
Okay,
add there, Geeta,
yeah, go
real
ahead.
quick? Just one more little piece that fits well with this is exactly what you said, that the language doesn't exist. And many times I find male clients telling me, especially in couples therapy, in a straight couples situation, they're telling me, but all my friends are like this, so what is wrong with me? And the wife is saying, but this is very abnormal. This is not how my father was, right? And there's a real disconnect between, because, and I have friends, male friends tell me, but all the guys are this way now. So then what is the problem? That means it's normal for guys, right? Why should it be a problem at all, right? And I think the men that I see do really well mental health wise are those that Anshul was pointing out, reflect on themselves and their relationship with themselves. Because we're so focused on other people, like he was saying, that I think the standard should be, do I have a relationship with myself? Am I capable of reflecting on those thoughts, feelings, and behaviors, knowing what I'm thinking and feeling and doing at any given time? And then slow the pace down. We are running, zooming fast ahead. The way I talk, zoom, zoom, zoom. It is that we are doing constantly. Slowing the pace down and being reflective, I think, then allows a woman to figure out what the standard should be for themselves. Because as Anshul said, it's a very individualized process.
Yeah, I guess so. So I have a question. So Dr. Gauri Gaur, I will keep this because we are coming into the intersectionality of age as well. So keeping your question alive for just the next section. So another aspect, Anshul and Diana, and you did touch upon it, Diana, is this data. What does the data tell us or not tell us about men's mental health? Which are the common illnesses, mental health, their propensity or, to certain, what kind of mental health issues are very commonplace amongst men? And what does the data not say or say? Both
So,
ways.
as I mentioned earlier, it is, the data itself traditionally, as Anshul said in the beginning, shows that women have, more depression than men do. But I think that what we're realizing now, and I was looking at some of research, and what it said was, what we do research on with men also is the problem, because, I was telling my students earlier, master students do a thesis, right? And for men, they will study aggression in men, they'll study nurturing in women. It will automatically be biased at the start itself, because aggression is traditionally not seen as something to be studied in a woman, right? In that way, I think if you read actual research on this the world over, and it's very limited still in our country, I think, depression, anxiety, stress-related illnesses, physical illnesses that are manifestation of psychological illnesses are typically what we see. The difference is, when I am depressed, and when I say the word depressed, right, I'm imagining that I'm having difficulty getting out of bed. I'm talking kind of, slouched down low. A man's expression of the depression might be anger. Yeah, it might be aggression. It might be irritability. And we're not recognizing them by saying he has an anger management problem, not depression. That becomes the big challenge. So I don't think that any research says that men experience something more than women or less than women in terms of actual mental health concerns, but the recognition of them by mental health professionals as well as by others is sometimes the problem. Research very clearly does show, like we said, and I want to point that out again, 2.6 times higher suicide rate in men. Men are killing themselves at a higher rate. And one of the reasons we think is that men traditionally, because they can be a little bit more aggressive, are more aggressive with themselves, right? So they might do more behaviors that are harmful to themselves or self-sabotaging. So when a woman is upset and depressed, I might call my best friend Geeta and talk to her and tell her, how I'm feeling. A man is more likely to have a drink with a buddy and go drinking, and alcoholism becomes a big issue. Again, masking the depression, typically. Anshul, over to you.
Oh, no, absolutely. I was just, the thought of substance use was something that really came up because, again, real men don't cry, or, you're a good boy, why are you crying like a girl? And as you grow up, you understand that, okay, technically I cannot share this with someone that I'm feeling sad, or I was hurt by something that happened, or that I'm stressed. So what I do, I go and, grab a substance. And that starts initially, how men see it is that this is going to help me adapt to the stress. And little do we realize that after a point, it just turns maladaptive so quickly because there's a whole biological component to it. And substance use, again, research shows the same that, substance use is reported higher in men. But we also look at it that why is it happening in the first place? Because they don't have a space to go and talk about it. And the other thing that, struck me was that in this process, when we look at the data, we also look at how men can actually have certain kinds of disorders, from a genetic point of view. So we look at maybe a psychotic disorder or something that falls on that spectrum. There's some data to indicate that because of genetics, certain men are more predisposed in their early years. So maybe in their early 20s, where they can start developing something like schizophrenia or a bipolar disorder. And that's technically when we go into details of what a mental health disorder is. But again, none of it is ever solely biological. And which is why when we look at it, there's so much of psychosocial aspect that we can actually work on. And that's where, young age childhood comes into the picture, because these stressors, they are not just, it happens once, it's over a long period of time. And that's when it reaches that critical point where there's a threshold that's crossed. And combined with the biological predisposition or vulnerability that exists and the constant increase in the environment of the stressors, it combines and, it eventually blows out. And the other thing, I think, when it comes to emotions is that, again, anger is something that men experience so much because that's the only thing that protects them from feeling any pain or sadness. Because how can a man feel sad or, buckle up? You need to provide. You cannot be seen crying. You cannot be seen whining over things. So men will always display signs of anger being the highest. And I also think that perhaps there's a certain change. So when men start becoming suddenly very, happy, there's a sudden change while things have been not going well for them. That's one very important trigger or indicator of something that we call smiling depression, where there could have been mass depression all this while. And now this person is changing into, okay, it's fine. Everything is good. What is, I'll take care of my family. Something will happen. And these are some of those rare instances that we miss out on, that families miss out on, that, yes, he had been sad for a while, but, 2 weeks ago, he was smiling. He was all okay. He was spending time with us. And little do we realize that that is actually their way of communicating because they don't know the language. And when it comes to bilingual, so for example, I've seen people with, either Marathi English combination or Hindi English combination. When they come into therapy, more often than not, when they express emotions, it's in their native language. मुझे अंदर ही अंदर बहुत दर्द हो रहा है और मला भीति वाटते or anything on those lines. Whereas when it comes to explaining how their life is going, they'll switch to English that yes, this is what's happening, this is how I've been feeling. So these are subtle changes that we notice and we realize that yes, language is something that's so important, yet so often we, men, we look at the rural areas, we look at low socioeconomic strata, they're not able to verbalize as much because we also don't have as many mental health professionals specializing in that language. So those are just a couple of points that came up.
Very interesting, I must say, because the cues, I mean, the issues could be the same, but I mean, the cues could be completely different, for men. And I think that is something that is so important for families and friends and colleagues to be able to pick up. I think it's a great segue into looking at the intersectionality across age, socioeconomic status. We talked about language already. How does that play out? And there's already a question in our or this thing on teenagers, boys, and the kind of pressures that they are going through. So I'll just read out Gauri's question. Dr. Gauri said, to that question. Teenage boys, I believe, are under very high mental stress. The causes are many, but what would be the solution? So some pointers for our audience here. And also let's take them through the entire spectrum of, age-specific issues that can pan out and which can be watch out and call outs for all of us to help our friends.
I think with specifically teenage boys, teenagers in general, it becomes a huge responsibility of the parents and the main caregivers who are the teachers as well in their lives, to ensure, at least, in South India, one of the big challenges we have is with this whole teenagers in the 11th and 12th. Right now, we have the 10th, 11th, 12th results coming out, and we see a spike in the rates of suicide among teenagers at this time, typically. The reason for that is teenagers in general, their brain development is something that is very unique to teenagers, right? We all have been through it, so we know this, that they first will act, only then they will think, because the part of the brain that needs to develop, that needs to think, is the prefrontal cortex, which is right here where I'm pointing on my forehead, right? And that part develops by the time you are, fully an adult, which is about 22, 23 years old, right? So it's not 18 like the adult we make them, we say, oh, you're an adult at 18. They're really not, because their brain is still developing. And so what happens to teenage boys, given the systems that we have been talking about and addressing, is that any failure, and especially the failure that happens at this time, unfortunately, is also because hormones are raging. And so the number one issue, I was running the counseling center at Osmania University here, and the number one issue that I would see young boys come in with is they would come and say, "Madam, love failure, madam." That would be the issue, right? Because that love failure, that failure in the exam, that failure of, going to 10th, from 10th to 11th, and no longer being the superstar you were in school, then the expectations that 11th and 12th mein kuch acha karna hai, nahi to you will never become something. We've seemed to forget that we all didn't do brilliantly well, and we are all sitting here doing perfectly well now. And yet we fall into that trap as parents. So I would say the most important thing to do is, if you've not set it up already, and now is when you're seeing your child struggle, really start watching them and supporting them more than you ever have before. Supporting them is going to mean sometimes pushing yourself to make sure that you know what's going on in their life, and balancing that with giving them space and giving them, their privacy that they need. But I say extremely cautious parenting at this point, where you are watching them like a hawk, because it is a very dangerous time given the cultural system that we have set up with our educational system. From what I understood from a friend whose son has now joined the engineering college in first year, she said, our South Indian parents, we push them so much. 11th and 12th, actually in school, at class 6, we're starting kids to go into IIT JEE studying for the future, for when class 13, which is the first year of undergrad. She said, so many of my son's friends who are now in college with him took a gap year and prepared for the entrances and then came, and they didn't lose anything from it. But in South India, we push the kids that you have to do this, you have to finish, you have to go abroad, you have to settle, you have to get a master's. That sets up these children for failure, because we are not providing them the resources that they need. Our education system is failing us miserably when it comes to our teenagers. And as parents, we got to watch them very, 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 very well. Now, what else can you do? I think you can help them. I would say, I always advise parents that if you have a teenager who you're struggling with, it's going to be a struggle. You will get through it. And remember, best predictor of future behavior is past behavior. So if your teenager was very high functioning before and they're functioning a little lower now, they will go back to high functioning when this crisis has passed. Teenage is the crisis. Support them in any way you can. They will refuse to go to counseling. They will say, my parents need counseling. That's the number one thing I hear them say. Bring yourself to counseling. Don't bring them. Show them you are willing to work on yourself to make their life better. That's the way kids will access help when they need it. Over to you, Anshul.
I would only add to this that, I think the generation before did not have enough words to express, whereas the generation now has lots of words to express their concerns. And I think that only can be reinforced by parents when they actually start verbalizing it themselves. That, yes, I am, when you lashed out at me yesterday during a conversation, I felt sad, I felt hurt. And I'm sharing that with you so that you can understand that we can have these conversations. More often than not, it's very much under the surface that, oh, that's my mother. Yes, I had an argument with her, and next morning things are going to be okay. I'm going to hug her, I'm going to leave my house, things will be fine. But that's what technically needs to change also for parents, and of course for even the teenagers, because they do have words now. They come in at times, and perhaps that was part of my learning curve where I was shocked that, okay, people already know what loneliness is, what anxiety is, what depression is. They're much more read up, they're much more educated and informed now. So teenagers are sort of going to find their own ways to deal with their own problems. And like Diana pointed out, when parents can actually look at that as the phase where they need to support them, and if they can start verbalizing it, that is a really good start, because then it's going to reinforce the pattern. That infinity symbol, it's both reinforcing each other, and that really, like you pointed out, will bring them back to that high functioning state once the crisis passes. And I think with respect to the whole prefrontal cortex, with men, it's also that they're more lethal in terms of the ways they would hurt themselves. That's also a difference that we've noticed at times, even in some of the government hospitals when teenagers would also come in. There have been moments where they've consumed Harpic, for example, a toilet cleaner, or there are times when they've consumed any other poison that may be at home. So, in a way, we also have to help them become more educated and informed about these basic things, especially when we see them going through a struggle. That this is not the answer, or this is not the only way to deal with things. Yeah. Over to you, Dr.
That was so wonderful. And I think across, I guess, teenage is a very, very critical point. And I think thanks, Gauri, for bringing that out in the chat. And across, what else? Let's look at some socio-economic. What could be those factors which can, trigger, or what are the differences that pan out for men? If you look at, the whole socio-economic spectrum. How will that be? And what is the access that we can, help or support since we now into this conversation? What is missing? Diana or Anshu?
Yeah, yes. I think the one thing that we really need to look at is that when it comes to men from low socioeconomic backgrounds, it's often because of financial instability. And that's one of the things that really makes access to things difficult. And we also need to understand that, yes, there are government hospitals that are running, they're also functioning at their best in respective cities and places. But again, we have a dire need for professionals. And because these people are at times not informed, they also don't know how to access them. And partly that happens because, this is going to be the flip side of the coin. Sometimes people in the community, in the healthcare community themselves might not be fully aware of what's happening. So if you look at it, people from low socioeconomic status, they wouldn't know what mental health is. They wouldn't understand what the importance is. For a lot of them, if we look at it, religion becomes a way of coping. And that's why we always factor that, culturally speaking, that when you don't have access to mental health care, everybody has certain supportive measures themselves. And the point is to strengthen that so that they can at least cope in their everyday life. So access, because of financial instability, definitely becomes a problem, because then there's so many other factors that come into play. Your basic biological needs are not being taken care of. If you don't have a good quality of sleep, or if you're not eating well, if you're not moving enough, automatically your mental health is going to be affected, because physical health and mental health go so hand in hand. And we always say this, even to people who come from good economic backgrounds, that 50% of things can actually be taken care of if your biology is respected. People talk about sleep hygiene, people talk about healthy diets, certain consumption of food, etc. We're always looking for the next best thing in the market to help us feel healthier. But if we look at it, we sometimes need to just go backwards and look at what has worked through evolution. And that's something that we look at, where basic sleep, good diet, and all of these factors basically then influence a person's mental health. That's when it comes to, the financial aspect of it. And the other thing I would also say is that it's also because some minorities may also have their own norms. So if you look at the villages, we go there, and whenever we would try and do some form of social camps, etc., as part of our training as well. For them, they don't quite understand what is needed to be done. All they know is that there's some form of disability or there's an abnormality. There's no understanding of a person can be differently wired. That's never used for them. It's, oh, this child has a problem, or this boy has a problem. So we look at these different factors that culture comes into play, and that can really then impact the access in itself. Because we've discussed how they can verbalize or not verbalize, emote or not emote. But access in itself becomes a problem if financial instability is a key factor. And that's why we look at from a social point of view that the country's economy needs to be better, because that automatically will start improving a lot of these factors. So that's something that comes from the experience of those.
Yeah, and I think it makes a lot of sense. And that's why when they say we look at overall well-being, financial, stability is such an important aspect, which can contribute to the overall mental health. Anything? Let's look at even sexual. Dinah, would you like to add anything here in this?
No, I was going to say that, it's Maslow's hierarchy of needs, right? The
Roti
very
kapda
basic
makan.
level. Yes. And so before those are met, nothing else can be met. And Anshul really made the most fantastic point ever, which is that if you don't take care of your biology, everything else will fall apart. So whether you are, whoever you are, that is important. And with teenagers and with children, because we were talking about kind of age ranges and patterns, with teenagers and children, having a routine, what helped during COVID, when we all were stuck in front of a computer like this and stuck at home in our small homes or big homes or whatever, was having the routine. We cannot tell you how much having a routine helps mental health. severe mental health problems are taken care of by having a routine. So whoever you are working with, be it somebody who's from the lower SES or who's extremely well-to-do, they need a routine for their life, which means go to bed at the same time and wake up at the same time almost each day. Eat, sleep, exercise, and socialize. Eat, sleep, exercise, socialize. Those are the mantra for good mental health across all age groups. And with our teenagers, they'll act like they know better and they don't need sleep. They do. They just need the same 8 to 9 hours of sleep, maybe from 3 a.m. to whenever. We even need it from 9 p.m. to whenever, but they need that sleep. So make sure you enforce that also with children.
Yeah, thank you so much. These are great pointers and they're so simple. And I think cognitively we just get it, but it just gets slipped out from, when we are under stress of managing our day-to-day life. What about sexual orientation? How does that impact mental health for men? Uh, can we talk about that as well? And then we will, open it up for a few questions. We've been taking most of them. And so over to whoever, Diana or Manshul, the whole aspect of how does it pan out?
Oh gosh, we're missing our third panelist for this one for sure.
I know. I was
But
hoping you
because
would
it's
join us
his,
till I get to.
I'm scared to say anything because if he joins, he'll be like, oh no, this is the right thing. But I will take my chance at it. I'll tell you my experience in general, right? I worked in America and I worked here. And I feel like the problems are the same everywhere. Okay, it's just access to resources is so much easier. When I ask groups of people, how many dentists do you know? Everybody will say within a mile they have 20 dentists. How many psychologists do you know? It's usually I'm the first one they're meeting the first time in their lives, right? So access is the big challenge. Now, in our culture, with regard to sexual orientation, and all forms of diversity, not just sexual orientation, but even with regard to, somebody with a disability, a physical disability, we have no access available. And I think with sexual orientation especially, it is so taboo that I still have parents calling me, telling me, hey, can you fix my child? I'll bring them to you. But I'm giving you a heads up, you got to fix them. I'm not bringing them to you if you're going to be on their side, right? That's the level we're at. So if we're talking about this is not even an issue and it's definitely abnormal, and unfortunately, a lot of professionals also continue to believe this. Not newer professionals, I think some older professionals still continue to believe the DSM says sexual orientation is homosexuality is in the DSM. The DSM is our Diagnostic and Statistical Manual of Mental Disorders. It was removed eons ago, but people continue to believe untruths, basically, complete myths. And so access is extremely problematic. Now, I think with sexual orientation, there is identity development that is happening, right? It's happening from a really young age. We're looking at, children who express their gender, who are gender non-conforming, for example. Yeah. There is a change, which I'm really glad about, that in bigger schools, the change has come about. And I've seen schools say, okay, it's a person who was born and labeled, female gender, but feels as though she's a male or he's a male and wants to be addressed as he, that child can wear shorts to school from now on, right? And that is okay to do. That's where it's beginning, because when other kids are seeing that, they're saying, hey, this is not a problem. Inclusive education, we're saying, right? We're still very far away from inclusive education in our schools with learning disabilities itself. So when are we going to get to this? But I think, people like our third panelist is working in this area in a fantastic way. Now, I think what we as mental health professionals can do is educate, because awareness is key. Anytime at the lowest level that you can educate people that sexual orientation is a continuum. It's not a categorical, you are this or you are that. It's a continuum. And some research suggests that it's a changeable continuum for some of us. For some of us, it might not be. And it's the person who gets to decide who they are. And we get to be respectful of that. That's a great starting point in our culture, I think. I'll let Anshul also share his thoughts on this.
I do think on very similar lines that when it comes to men, that also holds them back from reaching out, because at times professionals who are not informed, who are not inclusive, may land up judging them or may just tell them that, okay, I can't help you. And that can be perceived as a man or any person building up the courage to actually come forward and say that, okay, this is what I feel, this is how I've lived with it through my entire life. And when that is rejected, it really can take a toll on a person's mental health because they're reaching out. Imagine you're surviving on this, maybe on a branch of a tree, and somebody just offers you the rope and then says, "Oh, sorry, but I was giving it to someone else, not you." And that really takes away, it shatters you from inside. And with schools, I also think that there's so much of unlearning that needs to happen, which, if it doesn't happen now, will eventually create so many more problems in the future, which is why it's all the more important that work is done in this area, because ultimately it's even the professionals who have unlearned at some point. I can, definitely say that I wasn't taught any of this up until my training. There were so many times I would verbalize things a certain way, assign gender roles, assign sex roles, and think of it from that point of view, unless and until in those years of getting that feedback, realizing that, oh no, I've been thinking in, a certain gender role, whereas it's not the case. And when that starts to happen, what also happens is that people around you start noticing that maybe I can talk to this person. Maybe I don't want to, a friend can reach out. It gives them space to open up. And I think that's something that all of us can do at a very individual level, which is that if somebody expresses it, to not be judging them in any form, outright then and there, that, oh, what are you saying? Because if a person is expressing it to you or even thinking of expressing it to you, they've gone through a whole individual journey to reach that point and share it with you. And if we can just be informed enough to say, okay, I'm here to listen to you. Maybe I don't feel the same way. I'm not as informed, but you can pour your heart out to me. I cannot express how much that can change things, because it really allows access to then become a possibility. Because up until that point, they're not even thinking of ever reaching out to someone. All sometimes you need is someone to support you, to stay with you, stable enough with you that you can just reach out to another professional. And that's where holistic or comprehensive care can begin.
Thank you so much. And I think time is, I feel there's very less time for there's so many things that have kind of opened up. Even the audience is coming with, but I think to summarize, because we need to now kind of put it all together, we have a question from Ashish, which says, are there any physical behavior to look out for and so that we can help colleagues, friends, and relatives to understand that they are in mental stress? Or what is it that we can say? And I think this could be the last uh, that we can take, and then we will be winding up the conversation. And from now on, I think we will probably have a series point two version going forward. But for now, I think we will close with that.
I think great question, Ashish. What your question actually has the answer in it, right? You know a person, right? And so, I don't know Anshul at all. This is like one of the first times second time we're interacting really. So I don't know if this is normal behavior for him or not. But when you see a colleague, you see a friend, you see a family member, rarely are they first coming to a mental health professional. They're talking to their friends and family, right? And if you know their normal behavior and you notice something has changed, and you know that there are environmental stressors in their life, right? What we're looking for, with suicide, what we're looking for typically is verbal signs, behavioral signs, and situational signs. Look for those same things in anything with mental health, I would say. That people are saying things that are concerning to you. I don't know, life kya hai, theek nahi hai, bahut stress hai, I'm too stressed out, I can't handle things, it's too much on my plate, I'm getting very angry. These are behavioral changes for the person, right? You're noticing changes in behavior that are consistently staying for a week, for 2 weeks, because most of the time we're irritable 2-3 days and we feel better and we go back to our normal. If we don't come back to normal, it is time to check in. It is time to check in with that friend, with that colleague. In fact, I'll go back to my suicide one. With suicide, we say, if I'm concerned about somebody, we should actually go ask them. For example, Anshul, I'm really worried about him. I'm going to say, Anshul, people are so scared to ask this because they say, oh my God, I'm giving them ideas. But me saying, Anshul, I'm really worried about you. Are you having thoughts of, anything like maybe wanting to hurt yourself? I, as a psychologist, will say, Anshul, are you having thoughts of suicide? But most people will say, no, it's very uncomfortable. But ask. Asking reduces the risk of suicide. It doesn't increase. In the same way, like Anshul said earlier, talk to somebody, ask them how they're doing, because it opens up a doorway, right? The first time they might not tell you, But the second time you see them and you see them struggling, you say, hey, how are you doing? I just wanted to check in. You want to go have a cup of coffee? Asking opens the channel for them to feel like, okay, maybe I can share. And when they share, actually listen. That's what will really help. Yeah, Anshul.
Oh, 100%. We always follow this simple rule, never assume. Right? Don't assume that things are okay. And I think somebody just put up a question on similar lines that, when somebody is responding with, everything is okay, all well, nothing good, and you don't know how to decode it. Well, I would say this: be persistent. Don't don't of course don't enrage them. Don't go on to stalking level mode or going to those extremes, but stay persistent, because sometimes that's what is needed. There's someone to keep asking you, okay, you've been saying all well, all good, but you're not coming out for tea as often now. You usually would take this break at 4:30, and yes, there was a project you were working on for a couple of weeks, and that's fast, but what's changed? You don't respond to messages. You stop going out with us maybe every few weeks if there is a outing, social gathering, anything, subtle things, but it really is something that we see when people walk into the room. Perhaps that's when we realize that, okay, this person has been feeling that nobody's asking them. That's when loneliness starts to kick in, because you are around so many people, yet you feel like there's no one around you. So that's going to be my response to also that question, partly because Anna kept pointing out, asking, and that's really the key. Because at some point, my threshold will break, and I will just go like, okay, yes, things are not good. This is how I've been feeling, and thank you for staying around, sticking around, and asking me how I've been doing.
I think there's a follow-up of that that says that
Yeah,
they're
but I'm
persistent.
mindful of the time. Yeah,
Yeah,
but
I'll
I'm
just quickly
mindful of the
say
time.
it's okay if they don't say they don't want to tell you. Okay. The point is not for them to tell you. The point is that they know that they can come tell you when they need to. So all you say when they say no, you say, okay, I'm available to you whenever you need me. That's enough. That's all. So yes.
Important. Yes. I think we've had such a stimulating conversation. Thank you so much, Anshul and Diana, for holding this space and taking us through some things which were very apparent and yet not talked about sometimes. And thank you, all the audience out there, for your active participation. Thank you, Amaha, for supporting us in normalizing mental health conversation with us at Mind Matters. We will keep coming back with some more interesting themes, and I realize we may have to do another version of this very soon. Watch this space and look out for our alerts. Amaha, our partner today, is very generously offering discounts on individual therapy for all the participants to this session. So let me invite Nafas from Amaha to tell us more about it. And once he's done, we will wrap up the session. Thank you all. Stay here. There are some discount coupons to be taken. So over to you, Nafas.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Dr. Geeta. It was lovely session, lovely session. There's a lot to take home also from here, right? So especially regarding men's mental health, because that is a major topic, right? So thank you so much, everyone, and for this opportunity as well. So I'd like to maybe take 2 minutes and quickly take all of you through Amaha's enterprise well-being solution, right? I would definitely love to take all of you through a little bit of that, right? Because it is as important as we internally and externally around our environment also, that we always try to be better in any emotions that we are actually struggling with. I think it is important that an employer, right, as an organization also can actually extend some kind of support in terms of mental health to the organization employees, so that they also feel they feel that they're taken care in the organization, right? So they might have a little bit better connection with the organization, and that will always have a better maybe in terms of even if it is decision making, or if it is productivity, or anything of that matter at workplace. It is important that we extend some kind of support in terms of mental health, and that is something that I definitely want to talk about. So I'll just quickly share my screen and take all of you through what we have as an organization, right? So we are a workplace emotional well-being platform. And some of the statistics that we have seen from maybe the survey that was conducted by Deloitte, Asian Journal of Psychiatry, that As we all know, India is not one of the best countries to prioritize mental health, right? And we can see that it is actually 11th from the bottom. So that is something that we all can change, right? So with all of our efforts, with all the organizations and individuals taking some effort, I think we can definitely do that and get to a better position as well. And that is where Amaha also will help all the organizations, right? Where we bring in an entire plan for the organization, maybe an entire enterprise model for an entire year that we do with basic four structures, right? Or maybe four steps in the entire structure. One is definitely diagnostics with our proprietary diagnostics and assessments in place, right? And our bot-based check-ins for multiple ways that we actually understand and diagnose a particular situation in an organization or what is going on in the organization currently, right? So that gives us data to analyze and what is it, maybe moving on to the second step, which is the action plan, right? So there'll be an action plan which consists of self-care, psychotherapy, counseling, psychiatry, 24/7 helpline, right? So all of that considering the entire holistic wellness into one, which gives out the action plan, which moves us to this third part, which is the evaluation, right? And ongoing engagement as well. So ongoing engagement with creating awareness, with doing sessions like these, very informative sessions like these, right? And especially awareness collaterals, which actually goes out personalized to the employees because they have to connect with what are the thoughts that we are trying to give you awareness on, right? So awareness collaterals are done or through thought leaderships and other leadership panels and empowering programs as well. We constantly create more awareness in terms of all the levels, right? Especially in leadership, because leadership, if that is there is a buy-in for mental health, there is a much better culture that we can actually put in within the organization itself, right? And the reevaluation, which comes in with the dashboard, where the real-time dashboard will constantly help the HR department in any organization to constantly evaluate and reevaluate on the conditions that is there in the organization and bring in with a plan also to make the things better in the organization and bring in an entire support system exclusively for an organization in terms of what their demography is, what their conditions are also, right? So I just want to stop here, right? And thank you everyone for joining. We have a surprise for all of you as well, right? So we have a 10% lifelong offer that you can actually redeem from our organization. So from Amaha, you can download the application, start taking the consultations as well. And there is a coupon code that will be shared with all of you after the session, maybe in a day or so, which will be shared with all of you over email so that you get that coupon code. You can just use that coupon code to get a 10% consultation in every consultation that you take for lifetime, right? So that is I think that's a start, right, from our side, and your part could be taking that consultation and working on yourself, right? That could be a good start for you, right? So I just want to stop here and ask you if you have any questions, or I'll just stop here. Yeah. Right. Thank you, Dr. Geeta. Yes.
Nafas, if you could share the coupon code, or how would it go as mailers?
Yeah, I think we can share. So we'll be sharing the emails with everybody. I think that'll be better. So for every participants here, we'll be sharing individual emails to them. Yeah.
Yeah. So we have from NHRDNs, if you can share the coupon code, we will send it through a mail to all the attendees.
Right.
Thank you so much, and thank you everyone. Look forward to more such conversations. Let's destigmatize, give a voice to all the silence, and normalize as more and more. Let's add to the morenesses that I believe. Thank you so much, Diana, Anshul, Nafaz, and the Amaha team to support us. And thank you, Devika, at the back end, holding the fort for us. Bye-bye. Have a